Welcome back to the ProSource Podcast. I am sitting here today with Stephanie Pierce, Director of Design and Trends at MasterBrand. She's in person with me, so super exciting. MasterBrand's actually visiting ProSource right now. So I thank you so much, firstly, for coming on and being able to sit down with me and talk a little bit about MasterBrand and what's going on right now with the brand. Can you introduce yourself a little bit and just share what you do for the company?
Absolutely. So my name is Stephanie Pierce. I've been with MasterBrand for 23 years. Hard to believe it's been that long. I've seen a lot of change in our kitchen industry over that time period. I actually started with the company as a kitchen designer. So my background is in kitchen and bath design. Spent the bulk of my career actually doing product design. So really getting into finished development, door, SKU, solutions, creating opportunities to solve the problems that homeowners have for designers with the products that we offer. So that's been an exciting journey and such a big influence on my career. In more recent years, I've really taken on more of a trend analysis type of role as well as marketing operations. So a lot of work around how to deliver the right tools, how to deliver the right messages from a marketing perspective, which is a great segue into what we're talking about today with some of our brand identity work we've been doing.
So let's go ahead and go back to the start of this brand identity transformation that you're talking about. What sparked the move to reinvent the premium space identity?
Well, there's a couple of things, and I'm going to share them with you, and you're going to think, well, those all feel really obvious. What took you guys so long? But really, it was a culmination of, one, there was a lot of opportunity identified, particularly in our premium space.
Yeah.
With all of the things that go on from, COVID supply chain disruptions, tariff disruptions, all of the headwinds that we get in our industry. The one piece of our industry that tends to be a little bit better proofed against those types of disruptions is the premium side of kitchen and bath. And we've got 5 brands that sit there in our portfolio now. So 2 of which we acquired last year. So that was another instigator into this conversation. It's we have 5 brands now. What are we going to do with them? And how are we going to position them uniquely so that they have different identities? And how can we support our customers to be able to talk about those brands' identities? Yeah. And just in asking that question and understanding the opportunity that exists within the market, we realized it had been a while. I don't like to use the word, neglect, because we certainly weren't ignoring these brands. We just weren't giving them the care and feeding that they needed. Yeah. Identity is not a static thing that you create and abandon. It is an evolution. I mean, if you think about just your own identity, it's not the same today as it was a week ago, and it's going to be different a month from now. And so identity needs to be something that is fluid and kind of always being nurtured and cared for and evolved. And when we started asking ourselves these questions about, do we have a good solid identity? Do we know how to sell the story about who our brands are? The answer was, well, we haven't been doing that. We hadn't been as attentive as probably we needed to be. Yeah. And so we pulled some triggers. We invested in some opportunity. We invested in some new teams. We created some best practices across our business. We're doing some test and learns right now. We're trying out some things that we've never done before.
What were the 2 brands that were acquired?
Well, so our 5 premium brands that we currently have today would be Omega, Fieldstone, and Starmark. Kind of count those 2 brands kind of all under one umbrella. We have Dura Supreme, which was one of the acquisitions from last year, Birch Cabinetry, which was the second acquisition, and then we have Ultracraft, which is a full access line. Okay. So no frame products in that line. So we have 5 that really sit in that premium price point, and all 5 of them kind of came with a legacy. They came with a history of who they had been, and they all started in a different place. So not all of our brands, as we kind of talk through an identity journey and creating a better and more sustainable and consistent brand promise, every one of our brands is not starting at the same point. Some are a little further in their journey. Some are a little further behind. And that's actually one of the reasons that we chose Fieldstone and Starmark to start with, because that one had probably the biggest opportunity. It had the most comprehensive journey that needed to be looked at. Having that test and learn in place and building that template gives us as a company that has a portfolio of more than 50 brands, it gives us a template so that we can start to create consistency within our organization, which you need, right? Because we talked about it's a journey. And I don't want to confuse that with any meaning of we're not trying to homogenize these brands. They don't all need to look the same. They actually shouldn't look the same. The value of a vast portfolio is the differentiation that each brand can bring. But the lack of having a story to tell, having a brand promise, and having standard practices for how you can consistently deliver that identity is where you start to create gaps and holes. And actually, that was one of the other instigators. Back in 2023, we conducted some research to both designers and consumers, and we asked designers, how are you selling our brands? When you're pitching, what you feel is the right brand for this homeowner, like what makes you decide, one, that this is the brand that you believe is the right brand for them? And then once you've decided on that brand, what's your story? How do you tell the homeowner that this is the right brand and what they're getting for that brand? And what we found from designers' perspective is that where they didn't feel like we had informed them well enough for them to be able to share that story, they were filling in the gaps. So they were essentially making up their own iterations of who our brands were. And they were doing what we had failed to do, and they were building the story that made it easy for them to sell our cabinetry. So that was another big, right? That's another big aha moment as a brand owner. You don't want to lose control over who your brand is and what the promise is that your brand is pushing into the market. So all of those things really is what kicked us off on this journey and this evolution.
Yeah, and I think just simplifying, like you said, that process, especially for every brand moving forward. You guys have so many brands under the umbrella of MasterBrand, but simplifying it from the top really trickles down into not just ProSource designers and account managers, but then that also trickles into our trade pros and our designers, all of our members that are looking for cabinet options. And like, there's so many different options out there and who they should go to. But I think having a clear understanding of, like you mentioned, who Star Mark is or who Fieldstone is really just simplifies that process for them. So they're not really having to think too much about it. That it's just a given. Like, I should go with them because they do XYZ for me. Or I should go with one of the other MasterBrand brands that is under the umbrella.
Well, you risk disappointment too, right? Because if you interpret the value of the brand incorrectly, or you sell an expectation that the brand can't deliver on, then everyone's going to end up disappointed with that, right? So it's got loads of benefits across the board. There's a lot of value in having a really strong brand promise.
And we talked about Star Mark and Fieldstone. How does that kind of carry over into Decor and Omega, for example? I know those two brands are very widely available. How do those trickle into that?
So Omega, I'll tell you, is in a very different place because we have done some identity work. Omega has always been our highest and our most bespoke premium brand. But as we acquired, and are sitting here today with a portfolio of 5 of them, we really needed to understand what's the hierarchy of those brands. What are some of the guardrails, particularly as you start to think about the things that are linked to the brand, like the portfolio of products that are offered under that brand, the level of services that are offered under that brand. Those things are tied naturally to the brand promise. And so getting that defined and understanding, even for our internal teams, like what is the differences between these 5 brands and how can we maintain those differences, right? Because the differentiation is where the value comes from having multiple brands. And so not having a definition, not having a clear, consistent message created gaps even in our own ability to govern what those brands should be. But they weren't all in the same level of need. And like I said, I think Omega was a little bit more understood that it was bespoke and that it was the highest capability. I mean, just from a manufacturing perspective, it is the highest capability we have in our entire footprint of manufacturing. So that naturally influenced and tied to how we really solidified that brand's identity. Decora is in a different place within our portfolio. We're really positioning Decora to be part of an enterprise of of solutions that complement as you move through the value chain of products, from value products to semi-custom products to premium products. So it was already linked and affiliated with other brands within our portfolio. And so its identity really started from a different journey. It was less about creating guardrails around what the portfolio should be. And it was more about how do you build the relationships between the brands that are sort of connected to it via that enterprise of a continuum of easy to flow from one price point to the next. Yeah. And then premium really sits above and beyond that. So Fieldstone, Star Mark, Omega, they kind of sit beyond that. And it's when you have those really tricky problems that you need to solve, those very nuanced design decisions that need to be made. That's where you need that capability that goes beyond kind of standardized breadth. Yeah. And it goes into those very nuanced, very trend forward, right? Like you have to be able to be as flexible and as movable as the trends are. And trends move very fast these days. So I wouldn't say that necessarily anything that we're doing with Star Mark and Fieldstone are directly influencing what we will be doing with Omega. And Omega is next on our list to get the comprehensive package completed. It's not necessarily influencing that outcome, but it's building all of those checkboxes, right? To have a full brand promise and a consistent identity that we can talk about and deliver on all of our platforms, that our customers are able to talk about and deliver on their platforms. We really built a template that said, here's the 15 things that you need. And it's, what are the words that you use to describe this brand? What is this brand's manifesto? If you had to make a statement about this brand's identity, what is that statement? What value does this brand bring? And some brands might have, and they do, right? I started to say some brands might have a different portfolio of products. All the brands have a different portfolio of products, but there's a lot of overlap in that portfolio of products. And so it does put a lot of the burden on a designer to say, okay, I can get this solution in 3 of these brands. Yeah. And it's kind of to your point earlier, right? Like, why would I choose one over the other? Yeah. And sometimes identity and the services and the value propositions that are affiliated with that brand are the things that are going to kick it over. In our past, we weren't able to tell that story comprehensively. Gotcha. And so the value really of this work is putting it all in one place, being able to tell that story comprehensively, and being able to communicate it to our customers so they have the same access to that level of information.
It is important for people to identify what a brand is. And whenever MasterBrand does acquire a brand, how do you go about keeping, say they have a whole history behind them, do you keep all of that intact, or do you elevate it? Or I guess what's the decision making from, do we take this brand and completely change it, or do we hold on to some of their history that comes with it?
So MasterBrand is a business of acquisition, right? We have comprehensively under the MasterBrand portfolio, there are more than 78 brands. Now, some of those are series and some of those are private labels, but that's a lot of brands in your portfolio package, right? That's because over our 70 plus year history as an organization, we've just grown through acquiring brands. Yeah. And in every one of those acquisitions, the journey is different. There's no standard template for how you should behave with a brand. Gotcha. I would say conservatively, every brand has some value, right? Yes. You don't bring a brand into your portfolio that you didn't feel had value. And so to your point, right, it's digging into what is the true value of that brand and making sure that you don't mess with the integrity of that. If it's really great quality and a really solid production capability, then you need to stand behind that, right? Like that becomes part of the value proposition. If it's got great distribution or it's got a really great customer base, but maybe the identity of that brand wasn't as strong, then you hold steady to, the value of what that brand's acquisition was built around. And then you've got a little bit more leeway to go and build something. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to destroy any of the legacy. So it's really, on a case-by-case basis, finding out what makes that brand worthy of a legacy. And maybe it's the identity, maybe it's the capabilities, maybe it's the customer base, right? Any one of those things could be the foundation of that legacy. Yeah. And then you always want to build on top of that, right? You take a solid foundation and the goal is always to elevate it.
Yes. Yeah. No, I completely agree. How do you see this I guess, brand identity transformation directly impacting trade pros that work with ProSource?
I think it gives them a better narrative to sell the products against,
Yes.
right? Because at the end of the day, the pros out there, they just want to close the sale, and they want to make money,
they
right?
have a lot going on.
That's what they want to do. They don't want the complexity. They don't want to have to go find the answers. They don't want to have to go solution. They definitely don't want to fill in the gaps where we've fallen short of providing them with informations and insights. So I think the real value to them is getting that message delivered to them in a consistent way where it is usable to them and makes their piece of the puzzle, right? Their job and their responsibilities easier, faster, and get them to completion quicker.
Yeah, and I know MasterBrand, we'll talk about it in part 2 of having MasterBrand on to the ProSource podcast a little bit more, but MasterBrand has been providing so many great trainings to ProSource Wholesale designers. And I feel like that kind of has fed from what we're talking about today too, is just educating ProSource Wholesale designers and account managers so that they can easily educate their trade pro members and just make everything's about just like simplifying the process.
It is. I mean, we've had a lot of conversation about, if you think about just the life cycle of a designer, right? A new designer is faced with so many challenges. This is not an easy industry to get into. There's a lot of knowledge that you have to have, and it takes a long time to acquire that knowledge. And we've got some fairly recent data that says almost a third of the designers out there are within 5 years of retirement.
Oh, wow.
Those are your designers that know this stuff, right? Like they're the ones that can very intuitively and have this longevity and have built these relationships, and they have all of this knowledge. And the transition of that knowledge from, a very seasoned and experienced designer to a newer designer who's maybe just starting in the industry, that's a huge gap and a huge opportunity. And again, it's probably a lot easier for an experienced designer to fill in any pieces that are missing because they have all of that background. Whereas newer designers, and we need them, right? Like with a third of our design population kind of aging out of the industry, we need to be bringing new designers into the industry, and we need to make it easy for them. We cannot be contributing to the headwinds of bringing in fresh perspective, new experiences, new people who are going to continue to drive this industry into its next evolution. And so you're absolutely right. A huge part of our strategy and focus has been about simplification, taking out all of the friction points that we can't. Well, one, it's identifying all the friction points because there's plenty, let's be honest. There's loads of friction points, but finding what they are and then figuring out ways to solve for them to make the whole entire introduction into this industry, or even the maintaining of being a part of this industry, easier.
When thinking about this transformation, I also thought about how it might impact the way products are rolled out, or like how they might be redefined or maybe elevated. Has there been any influence on that side of things from this transformation?
Absolutely.
Just a loaded question.
No, but it's a great one. And honestly, like when you were first asking, I was like, well, no, not really, because the goal isn't to create identity and then inhibit the creativity of how to solution with a portfolio breadth. But on the other hand, it is about differentiation, right? It's not creating identity is not about homogenizing a story. It is about being able to tell a unique story consistently. And so with that unique story and with that differentiation certainly comes identity guardrails. Now, I would say they're blurry in our industry because you need what you need, right? Like if the trend is arched doors, then you need arched doors, and that shouldn't be held exclusive for one person. But if your identity is not to be kind of bold and in your face, if your identity is creating legacy, creating longevity, creating consistency, right? Like there's a lot of people who are find that very appealing. In contrast, you have other consumers who are like, I am bold. I want to be in your face. I want to be exciting. I want to be energizing. Well, those are two very different brand experiences. And there are certainly characteristics of each of those types of portfolio products that can enhance that, right? There are colors There are door styles that give you that bold, in your face kind of personality. And then there are colors that are really rooted in a lasting legacy of classic design and not something you have to be scared of utilizing, because we've intentionally curated a palette of colors that meet that expectation. So in that way, and I would say it's looser, but it's there, right? In that way, I would say the identity absolutely does influence some of the product, but not in a way where we want to create like gates.
Gotcha.
Where we can't get past something, or you can't introduce a trend or a need that is got the potential, which when trends start, you don't know if they're going to go mass. Sometimes trends fizzle out at the top end, and they never really gain the traction to become something more. But not knowing that means you don't want to put those hard lines in place and limit the ability to bring those really cool features all the way through at every price point, because trends do travel that way. It's not unlike fashion, right? If you think about the fashion industry, style trends start at couture, and then they go into kind of high fashion, and then they go to mainstream fashion, and then they go to discount fashion, right? Like it trends travel that way in the fashion industry, and they very much travel that way in our industry as well.
Yes, I completely agree. That's a good way to think about it. Where do you see this premium brand identity heading over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it has to continue to evolve. Like I said, we have had a practice in the past where we've looked at it, you updated it, and then you kind of walk away from it, and that is a recipe for it to become stagnant.
Yes.
So I think the different perspective and the approach that we're taking to it, and as I said, particularly around the fact that we've restructured, we've put people in place who this is their primary responsibility, is to maintain and to continue to evolve and grow these identities. So I would say, it's not going to change every single year, but you can't take your eyes off the ball, right? You have to continuously be watching it, and it has to continuously evolve as that need arises. And I would tell you, I don't think that will pace the same for every brand. I think depending on what the brand's value proposition is and what they're really supposed to be delivering at their price point is going to affect how often and how frequent we need to be evolving it.
I think that's a great way to measure it, because I think a big theme of this episode has been not every brand's the same. Every brand travels at its own pace and has its own story. So you can't really have a template that works for every single brand. I wanted to know if there was any other master brand lines that are currently undergoing this transformation, or can you call out the ones that haven't yet that you plan on moving through this transformation?
Absolutely. So we are definitely starting at the premium end of our spectrum, right?
Yes.
Because the largest opportunity and the most comprehensive amount of information really needs to go into the brand promise at that level.
Yeah.
And then, as I said earlier, right, Fieldstone Star Mark, out of all the brands that we looked at, it had the most opportunity to go front to back, right? Like, had a good it had really strong legacy, and it hadn't been touched in so long. And the perception from many of our designers is that they love the brand. It's got a good reputation for legacy and quality, but it feels dated.
Yeah.
And that was the word that was most commonly used, right? Like, it's dated. And it's like nobody wants to think that their brand has this dated appeal. And so, starting with them and starting at the premium and building that comprehensive template allows us to get kind of the largest example of what potentially we could touch. And then every brand after that can kind of pick and choose from that formula of what they need to enhance or communicate or solidify their brand promise. So definitely we're kind of starting at the top end of the spectrum, and we're going to work our way down. And there are brands in the mass appeal or the mid price point part of our portfolio that don't need a lot of identity work. They just need more consistency in how that identity is delivered, right? So they're not going to be in the same place. And then there are other brands within our portfolio. I think one that we've kind of loosely talked about is maybe like a Home Crest, where they don't really have a big, strong identity. So there is a lot of opportunity to really build who that brand is and what that brand can serve and how that brand can create benefit and value. So there's definitely, I mean, we have so many brands. So there's numerous ones. I gave you a couple of examples, but even just sitting here talking to you, I've got some running through my head. And I'm like, there's a lot of opportunity. Yeah. Yes, I will just say that. There's a lot of opportunity for us to be on this journey for a while and do it right. But the good thing is it's not just one area of our business that is trying to work our way through all of this. We've really created those brand owners within our business, and they're always on, they're always aware, and we'll trickle through and give them the support, and we'll work our way through the entire portfolio is the goal.
Because you guys have invested, like you mentioned, into this process that really shows the dedication. And this isn't just an idea that's going to float away within a few months, right? This is a huge investment and a huge plan that MasterBrand has set in place to truly elevate every single, brand that falls under that umbrella of MasterBrand. And if you're wondering how many brands there are, masterbrand.com, there's a spot on the site, brand portfolio. But if you go there, you'll be able to see every single brand laid out. It's a great resource. I use it actually all the time because sometimes I'm like, I know this is definitely under MasterBrand because there are so many. So I go there all the time. I'm probably upping your guys' website traffic a little bit.
We appreciate that.
So if you're interested in just seeing all the different brands, you can go there. Is there anywhere else that people can find you that would be a good resource to just learn more about this?
That is probably the most comprehensive place to go, for sure.
Yeah. The website as a whole is great too, but I frequently visit that one. So anything else you would like to share about this transformation? I'm excited to see this continue over the next years and many years to come, but anything else we can expect to roll out to showrooms? Or
I don't think so related specifically to the journey that we're on. I mean, as we approach those brands, you'll definitely start to see some visual shift in those brands. So, the one that's launching here in September 29th is Fieldstone Star Mark. And with that launch, you will see all of the brand new identity. You will start to see the tone shift. If you navigate to their websites after their launch date, you will see an entire facelift that's happening there. So it's not just in the physical, like selling aids. It's on all the digital properties, building that consistency. And it's really not a lot of value add if you do all of this work, but then you don't share the visualization of that and the consistency of the message. So a big part of the comprehensive, brand identity work is to get it out there and deliver it consistently across all platforms. So you will see that. That will definitely be an impact. And then hopefully the little less tangible aspect of it is we hope that this makes it easier to sell our products. We hope that we start to see a lift in the brand value and the brand loyalty and the selling of the brands when we've done all this work and we've delivered this ease that goes along with it. So there's a lot to look forward to and definitely some opportunity to continue to see it happen.
Yes, and ProSource is a very close partner with MasterBrand. I mentioned earlier that you guys provide a lot of education to our showrooms, which just makes that partnership even easier to then flow into the members' buying process and which brands they should choose. So thank you so much for the great partnership.
Thank you.
We have another podcast episode with MasterBrand coming out. So if you're listening to this, make sure to stay tuned for that. I'm sitting with Evan and Micah from the MasterBrand team. We're talking specifically about Schrock, Diamond, Kemper, which is a lot, but they really break down those specific brands and explain it in a way better way that I could do. So it's a great episode. Make sure to stay tuned for that. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me today,
You're
Stephanie.
welcome. Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Thank you for joining us today on the ProSource Podcast. Please like and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. Also, follow us on social media, check out our website at ProSourceWholesale.com, and visit your local ProSource Wholesale showroom for all of your home remodeling needs.